How you guys doing? I'm Josh Merritt. I'm a senior, set to graduate in this May. I'm a mechanical engineer. I'm in Tau Beta Pi and also a member of ASME. But really, they really just wanted us to talk about our co-op experience, so I'm just going to jump right into that. My first co-op was with United Technologies Aerospace Systems, which is a company in Windsor Locks, Connecticut. They mainly do cooling systems and stuff for airliners, and they do some space and naval work. This job was unique because I got it myself. So I went on Cool, ranked all my jobs, and in parallel, I applied to a couple other jobs that I found online that I thought were interesting or something that I might want to do. As far as that's concerned, it was a great experience for me because I learned a unique skill set. They taught me finite element analysis, which is something that most of these cool jobs aren't going to teach you on your first time because you don't know enough. So the most I can really say about that is I recommend in parallel maybe you take a look and see if there's something else you want to do, just because really you don't have anything to lose. You can do, worst case scenario, you don't get an interview and then you apply next time. And plus, if you find someone who takes a special interest in you, like this company offered me a job already and I haven't even graduated yet. So if you can find a job where someone takes an interest in you and teaches you a unique skill set, it'll make it easier to get jobs in the future. But at UTOS, I was structural analysis co-op, so I basically designed models, did finite element analysis, or essentially just analyzed them to make sure they weren't going to break. While I was there, I worked on a lot of cool projects. I did a failure investigation for ISS, or the International Space Station. I did a lot of work for the Orion program, mainly on a couple heat exchangers that they have that's still in the works. And I did a lot of stuff for the Navy, like a lot of acronyms and stuff that I don't remember now. So. My second one, so after I was at United Technologies, I went to Space Exploration Technologies, or SpaceX, which some of you might know is Elon Musk's space startup that's now doing resupply missions for ISS. I got that job mainly because I got the unique experience I got at United Technologies, because I knew finite element analysis and I could talk to them on the phone about it. They were impressed, so I got that job, which was very lucky because I wouldn't have gotten it without the first one. So there I was doing tooling design, which was essentially, that company was cool because from the start, like, they just toss you in. They say, this is your first project, figure it out. I had no experience in doing mechanical drawings, manufacturing. I do a little bit of 3D modeling, but not much. So literally they said, we need this, design it, manufacture it, analyze it, get it made. So I had to work with the people on the floor and then implement it. So go give it to the guy and make sure it works, and if it doesn't work, start over. So that was an experience and a half. Plus I went to LA, which was awesome, especially when all your friends are here in January. It's much warmer. Major projects I worked on there were rocket transport, so they wanted to move the rocket around the floor, which if you've ever seen stage one of a rocket is like, I think it's like 100 yards, or I don't even know, but it's large. So ways to move that around the floor, and then a lot of miscellaneous tools like mandrel covers and different adapter plates that they would need. So those came quick and went quick, but that was an awesome experience. And then my third co-op was at Sikorsky Helicopter, which is also a UTC company, and it's in New Haven, Connecticut. So I moved down to New Haven. As far as it was a little tricky to find housing, so when you do go on a co-op, if you do go far away, one of the things that I found pretty simple was just sublet. So I sublet from a kid who went to Yale, because it was in the vicinity of Yale. So you sublet from another college kid, and you're living with a college kid who knows other college kids, and it actually makes the move process a lot easier, especially because at Sikorsky I was like one of the youngest people there, so I didn't work with a lot of people I became friends with, but I kind of met them through the people I was living with. That was an awesome experience. It was similar to what I did at UTOS, so a lot of structural analysis work. And while I was there, I mainly worked on the 53K helicopter, which is shown up there on the right. That's the new Marine helicopter. It's the largest one they've ever built. And I actually led the analysis for the horizontal stabilizer, which you can't really see in that picture, but it was pretty cool. So that's pretty much it. Cool.
Hey guys, I'm Matt Beatty. I am also a senior mechanical engineer with a minor in biomechanics. Unlike Josh, I did all three of my co-ops here in Massachusetts. So I'll start you with that whole process. My first co-op was at Boston Scientific. When I was looking for my first co-op, I really was thinking I wanted to get into the biomechanical field, do anything that's medical related. So all of the first co-ops that I looked at had some kind of medical device history associated with them. And this first co-op came in finals week of that sophomore year. So if you don't get a job, truly don't worry about it. They'll come at some point. So just keep that phone on hand. They'll call you at some point in the middle of a final maybe to offer you a job. So I worked at Boston Scientific on the endoscopy R&D team. We were working on the next generation of a guide wire, which was one of their products that they do at Boston Scientific. So with that project, I worked on a small team of about 4 engineers to characterize their current product, how it behaved, how it performed, what doctors liked about the product, what they didn't like about it. I worked to characterize other competitors' guide wires to see what makes them different and how can their differences be implemented into Boston Scientific's product to make it better. So all of this was being used to generate some kind of test that you could do repeatedly to see, is one guide wire better than another guide wire, so that they could eventually determine if they could make a better product for the future. So this was a large company. It had that biomedical feel, and it was heavily focused in testing. And that's basically what I got out of that first co-op. It was a great experience. It taught me a lot about the industry. After that first co-op, I actually went abroad to Australia with Pete. And when I was in Australia, I was searching for that second co-op. And I actually used Pete and some other people as resources. Pete had worked at the second company that I co-op for at Philips Color Kinetics. So I used him kind of as a reference and a starting point as an initiation for that communication between me and the company, and said, hey, I'm interested in a position, and because they knew Pete, and Pete was a good guy, I think it kind of sped up that process, and I got an interview with them, and I was able to accept a position in another country, which was pretty cool. So you might be wondering, I started off as a biomedical guy, and I'm working for a lighting company, so there's kind of a big gap between the two. And what I really wanted to do was get an experience in a completely different field. So when I took the job at Philips Color Kinetics, I kind of made the decision, I want to see what another industry is like. I want to get a feel for something else to see, maybe is biomechanical not where I want to go? Maybe I'll love it after I go to another company, who knows? But it would give me some kind of perspective changing fields. At Color Kinetics, I worked with one woman on the City Innovations team. And basically, I got my own project from day one. You can see it. It's up there, that picture with me holding the iPhone, looking kind of silly. That thing behind me, I built 17 of those, and they were up in the city of Boston for 7 months. I can talk about that later on. But that was my main project, was building these installations that went into Boston to show off company product and their API platform. And after that project was done, I got a chance to work on a low-profile fixture that I kind of took up from the ground and built up, as well as some facade system research and just general odds and ends around the company that needed help with. So Philips Color Kinetics, in closing, it was kind of a large-sized company like Boston Scientific, but I was working, instead of in the biomedical field, in a prototyping field and with an electrical focus. So I kind of got this 2 different experiences, which led me to my third co-op at Fixed Product Development. And this is a product development company, and it was really cool. It's super small though. It was only 13 people, so you get, like, you can't hide. You can't not do work, which is a different experience coming from those other 2 big companies. But it's also really exciting because the atmosphere was young, everybody was excited, there was tons of stuff to do, and I got an opportunity to work on a lot of different projects ranging from the medical devices to consumer products, to just general testing equipment. While I was at Fixed, I got a chance to learn how to machine and make molds, just do general testing again, like a lot of other co-ops, and work heavily with laser cutters and other rapid prototyping equipment. Pete, next slide.
I'm Peter McNulty. I'm also a mechanical engineer graduating in May. I'll jump right into my co-ops as well. So at the first one, I also worked at Color Kinetics like Matt did. I had a slightly different position there. It was a really good first co-op. I got some really relevant design experience and hands-on work, which I was very fortunate to get right off the bat. I worked on a number of different lighting fixtures, and just so you guys know, Color Kinetics does like the light fixtures on top of Prudential, just big like facade lighting, things like that. So I worked on a few different injection molded parts that actually are now in the World Trade Center, so it's very rewarding within a few months of being an engineer, you already have parts that are like a relevant install in the world. Color Kinetics also had a great machine shop, so I went in there not knowing a lot of machining skills, and I left having worked on mills, lathes, a number of woodworking tools, so that was also a very good experience. So with my co-ops, I really wanted to get a few things out of them all. Some diversified design experience. I wanted to look at a few sectors of the engineering field, which is kind of what led me into my second co-op at Digital Lumens. At Digital Lumens, I was in applications engineering, which kind of spans the gap between business and engineering. So at Digital Lumens, which is also an LED company, just a different sector within the LED field, the applications engineers were responsible for debugging any issues, going out to different warehouses and sites that the lights were installed, and helping with their implementation. So at Digital Lumens, I worked with customers to help develop lighting layouts and network implementation, so how many lights they would need for their facility and things like that. It was very rewarding because you got to work directly with customers, which is not extremely common for engineers, so it was a very good experience to work on those communication skills. My third co-op was very different. I went to Santa Cruz Bicycles. I have a very large interest in mountain biking. I've been racing mountain bikes for years, so this was an awesome experience. I was the first time co-op there, so Karen Kelly and Allison helped me develop this position, which I'm very grateful for. At Santa Cruz is based in Santa Cruz, California, so the move to the West Coast was one that was very rewarding, and I recommend broadening horizons and taking an opportunity if one arises. At Santa Cruz, I helped develop some prototype frames, doing the CAD work for those and developing some custom parts, which I'll talk about later. I also helped improve the manufacturing process by integrating some fixtures onto the production floor to expand capacity, as well as design and fabricate a number of different testing fixtures, which was pretty fun because you got to break a lot of mountain bikes, which is pretty cool. This co-op was very cool. There was a lot of job perks, like you got to go mountain biking a lot of the days at lunch, and you got, like, the top picture there was a company trip to Lake Tahoe, which was a lot of fun. So if you have an interest in something that you feel like you can get a job in, definitely go for it, would be my recommendation.
So in addition, besides co-op experience, they wanted us to bring in samples of work. So something you could bring to an interview and show that you actually know what you're talking about. So I don't know how unique it is, but all three of mine were in the aerospace industry, which is very ITAR regulated, so I couldn't take anything from there. So talking with Allison, she suggested that I make something. So this, full disclosure, I made last night, so I made it pretty quickly. But it kind of steps through the idea, and then maybe you could apply it to yourself. So basically what I did is I created a very simple part, and then I did a finite element analysis on it. Now, finite element analysis is the one thing that I thought set me apart from most other people because I have a lot of exposure to it. So I want to prove to the employer that I know what I'm talking about. So I take a simple part, which I modeled in SolidWorks, so it shows that I can do SolidWorks. And then the first step, okay, I look at the part. What are the major things that I see when I look at this part right away? So I'm going to apply a bearing load. Where do I expect it to fail? Where are the stress concentrations? How am I going to support it? So right there, I've pointed out the major things that I see right away. So I'm like answering questions without them being asked. Then you mesh the part, dense mesh in different areas. I mean, this is all about finite element analysis, which a lot of you aren't familiar with. But the idea is more, instead of teaching you finite element analysis, is to teach you to take something that you know a lot about, that you want to prove you know a lot about, and step through what would you ask if someone was presenting this to you, and just show it to them right away. So say, I know this. This is the deformation after I applied the loads to it. Does this look logical? Does this make sense? Analyze results. I found that this part wasn't going to break unless I applied 25 times the load. So what does that mean? Well, that's not really efficient. So there's a couple things you can do moving forward. You can thin it out. You can apply a different load path, or you can just use a cheaper material. So basically what I'm trying to say is take something that you know, prove that you know it, and then prove that you know it really well. And at the same time, I think it shows a lot that you came with something. You say, I prepared this for this interview. It shows that you're enthusiastic. And I've been told by every employer that I ever had that they'll take someone who's enthusiastic about a job rather than someone who's just going to come in and clock in. So that's just an example, not the best example, but
I think it's fabulous.
Pretty good example.
Yeah.
So I'll take you through the thing that I did in my second co-op, and this is kind of the main thing that I harped on for my third co-op and how I got that job at Fixed, was showing the design process. So, like I said, my major project was working on these design beacons. You can see I've got like a wall of text up there, but essentially what I was trying to do was create these interactive light beacons that you see on the right, that when you use a smartphone, you could actually change the color of the light actively. And there were 17 of these put around the 4-Point Channel district in Boston, and they lived there for 7 months. So these are all things that I kind of had to think about when I was designing them. They gave me a couple of parameters from day one, like the basic geometry of the device and the solar cell, and that was it. And they kind of let me run wild with everything else after that. So in this process, I was able to learn basically the 3 steps to how to make a part. You can CAD it, manufacture it, and then install it, hopefully, or send it off to production if it's not an actual installation like this. But one of the major things that I learned when I was on that co-op was SolidWorks. I had a little bit of experience with it in my first co-op, and I really got to build on it in my second co-op. So all of the CAD was pretty much done by scratch. You can see that big assembly down at the bottom. It had a bunch of different moving parts. A lot of the vendors for the things that I bought didn't have pre-made CAD, so I would make it on my own in my free time, just as kind of a way to show the whole system on a computer so that you could make sense of it and say, is this going to work? Is this too heavy? Does the installation method look sound when we put these things in Boston? Is it going to make sense to have this big top part that you see at the bottom? Is that too heavy to lift up? But basically all the CAD was meant to show people how it goes together and answer any questions for why I chose certain things. In the middle section, you can see manufacturing. So once you have a solid design, you can really start to machine things out, tool them. On the top picture is an example of me running a CNC router to machine out a bunch of the square wooden plates that you can see throughout the actual beacon on the left. And I did all the electrical work and wiring that you can see down in the bottom picture. So that was all at my desk. It was a mess for about 2 weeks because I had wires coming here and there. But it taught me a lot about different types of wiring, how you can actually create your own cabling if you need to, and what goes where, and not to touch AC. I learned that pretty quick. And then on the right is the final product. Like I said, we installed 17 of those, so I got a chance to actually say at this co-op interview, I led the install, and it took 2 days, which was a little longer than I was hoping for, but we also only had 2 other guys that were working with me. And it was also pouring rain both of those days. So it was like March, 20 degrees and rain. I don't really know how it all worked out, but everything stayed lit, everything worked for 7 months. They got good data out of it. They were pretty happy with the product, and it looks great on a portfolio.
Matt, what data did they get out of it? What was it?
They got some data on public interaction with light beacons. So does the public actually like playing with lights?
Okay.
They kind of found, it depends. They put this up in a pretty heavily trafficked area for business folks, because the south end of Boston is fairly heavy with new startups and whatnot, but it turns out that's not a great place to go because people are either trying to hustle to work or from work. So, there's not a lot of time for play on the walk to and from work. So when these things were on and available to use, people were usually trying to hustle past them. But that's the data that they're trying to get. They're also just trying to see if people liked playing with their API technology, which is I forget the acronym. But it's basically how you can connect from one company to another company's technology.
So just before I get into this, one piece of advice. Early on in your first co-op, I would have a discussion with your manager and just talk about what you'll be able to take from it as far as portfolio work, so things like we're showing you. I made the mistake of waiting till the very end of my first co-op and then kind of scrambling to get work, and you inevitably forget a lot of the things you did. So every few weeks, try to write down what you've done, take some screenshots of CAD, so take phone or images of like testing work you've done, just so you don't have to do it at the end, and it'll help you guys out a lot moving forward. So I'll jump into this. So this was a prototype frame I worked on at Santa Cruz. It was for one of our sponsored athletes, so I worked closely with him to develop geometry of the bike. This guy's doing like backflips over 60-foot jumps, so he's very picky about the geometry of the bike. So the idea behind this bike was to use as many existing tubes and parts and kind of concoct this, because this was like a one-off bike currently for him to use in competitions. So what I did was I did all the CAD work. I developed where the suspension pivots need to be in correlation to how the suspension needs to act for his type of riding. So all the CAD work was done. I had to design a few new parts to work on strength, tire clearance, and the suspension placement, as I said. So the bottom two images are some of the CAD work, and the finished product is the one on the right, and he's been riding that all year. Go to the next slide. These were the two parts I had to design. This one connects the chain stays of the bike, which is the tube connecting the rear axle to the front of the bike. The idea behind this was that it has to have as much tire clearance as possible while remaining very strong. And I had that machine. We had a CNC machine in-house and two very talented machinists, so I worked with them to have that machined and have this lower tube machined as well. And then I developed a bunch of different drawings which were printed on a 1-to-1 scale, and I worked with one of the machinists downstairs to get the frame welded up and rideable. So this was a very rewarding experience. I love mountain bikes, so it was really cool to see this project from finish to end, essentially, while I was at Santa Cruz.
Great.
So we'll open it up for questions.
Yeah.
You go.
And as you guys get questions, can you just repeat them so that the camera can hear them?
Yep.
Thank you.
Come on. We'll let you sit here in silence and be comfortable.
Some of you that created your own co-ops outside of school, like how did you go about that?
So the question was, how do we go about developing jobs outside of school? Mine was, my engineering manager actually was a Northeastern graduate. So a number of people have tried to get co-ops at Santa Cruz, and Karen always hounds him about doing so. So
You stalk them.
yeah, Karen stalks at Santa Cruz, and it was kind of, to be honest, it was kind of like a right time, right place kind of thing. So they had the budget for it, and I guess I was the right candidate. So it was more luck than anything, and as well as Karen's hard work.
Well,
So.
it was
It
your
also
talent.
was your portfolio, too.
And my portfolio.
Mine was a lot simpler. Mine was my first co-op, so I didn't have really anything to show them. I literally just went online. Companies I thought were cool, most of their websites have, you go to careers and then you click co-ops, and sometimes they have them posted, sometimes they don't. I just threw my resume out there and just saw what stuck, and I got a job. So it really doesn't have to be that well thought out. You just kind of apply and see what happens.
For those of you who were abroad while applying for co-op, can you speak a little to that experience?
Sure. Yep. So the question was going abroad and getting co-ops. How does that all work out? So for me, I think it helped a lot that Pete had worked at Phillips Color Kinetics. I mean, in general, the process is the same. You still email out your resume, and you just make it aware and put on your resume that you're studying abroad, because that's pretty cool. First of all, that'll grab people's attention right off the bat. But basically, you just wait for the responses back, and then you try to find times that are going to work for you that aren't inconvenient for the other party. So in Australia, it was a 14-hour time difference. So we basically just had to say, if you want to meet your afternoon, we'll just get up really early and we'll interview then. So there are a bunch of us that were doing that at the same time. So it just comes down to being flexible and understanding that it's probably better practice to accommodate to them, not accommodate to you. So just be very aware of your time shift and have a fast internet connection to Skype on, which is the other thing. Which is not possible. And wear pants when you interview. Even though you're sitting down, it makes you feel official.
Did you Skype? Were all your interviews Skype?
Yeah, Skype interviews are really common.
I would encourage any of you, if you're studying abroad, to set up a Skype account right away. You have to. I'm amazed when students don't have it. I guess set that stuff up.
And then you don't have that stress either of, I got to create a Skype account, you know, the day of my interview and what if it doesn't work and all that.
And they're not going to FaceTime you. They're just not going to do that.
And actually, just to add that to that real quick, when you develop your resume, when you're abroad, you go ahead and you add that onto your contact information. So you put your phone number, your email address, and your Skype name,
Great.
so they can get in contact with you.
Thank
I,
you.
I also leverage personal connections to get mine as well, so I think, I definitely wouldn't not study abroad, but I think it's definitely much more difficult to get a co-op just because, I mean, we were in similar shoes. We both had one co-op on our belts, all the same classes, as well as, you know, all your other peers are going to have the same thing. So employers are naturally going to be like, well, these two candidates are pretty similar. I can see this one face to face. I can't with this one. So it definitely makes it a little bit more difficult, but
Challenge.
it's a challenge, but you can definitely overcome it.
Yeah, and actually I can speak to this too in another sense. My girlfriend studied abroad. She was doing a civil engineering co-op, and she was with us.
Yeah.
She was interviewing, things weren't working out, people weren't getting back to her for what reason or not. She came back in December without a job and still managed to interview. So if you go abroad, just be aware you might not get it while you're abroad, but be very flexible and open to having a clear December so that you can travel back and forth to companies and meet FaceTime and actually communicate. She got a co-op, it worked out great, but it wasn't as stress-free as Pete in my experience.
Another thing too that I just want to mention about the job searching process while abroad, it's really important that you're in touch with us as well. I mean, I was just telling Karen before we came here, I have a student right now who's abroad. She hasn't got any calls. She's a junior, so she's got 2 co-ops under her belt. So I took her email, forwarded it off to my whole group so that all the coordinators in our department are aware of the student. So it's just really important. We're your biggest advocate, and so to keep us informed. I think you and I talked at 9 o'clock in the morning my time, and I'm pretty sure it was like 11 or midnight or something your
Yeah.
time. I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah.
And but you did it, and it worked.
We'll go with you first.
Mostly for Josh. What's it like working with very heavily regulated companies?
Well, the first, United Technologies and Sikorsky are union, so one, it means you can't touch any really machine parts. You can't go, well, you can walk in manufacturing, but you're not allowed to touch any type of machining or anything. So that kind of stinks if you're a very hands-on person. But at the same time, what I found, comparing it to SpaceX, which is the complete opposite, it's a little slower paced because there's like more of a paperwork process you have to go through. But when it's slower paced, you can kind of take your time with things, and I think I at least had I was able to gain a better understanding of what I was doing because you got to take your time. You could make mistakes, you could go back, you could try again. And I think for co-ops, for me at least, I thought the more regulated company was nice. It was awesome, but I didn't get any of the machining experience. So if you're a hands-on person, I wouldn't recommend it. But I think you can learn your fundamentals maybe a little bit better because you have more time to spend with them, if that makes sense.
Have you preferred working for large or small companies, and why?
Okay. Yeah, that's a good question. And I would recommend, from personal experience, try both. I mean, even if you started a big company like I started at, and you really liked it, give a small company a try at least once, just to see, again, maybe you're crazy, maybe you don't know what you like. Co-op's kind of a chance to experiment, but I think I like small companies. Your voice is heard a lot more. It's, like I said, it's harder to hide. Not that that's ever a real issue, because you shouldn't be hiding, you shouldn't be like on your phone all day. But you can totally get away with that somehow in some of these companies. You can kind of lose yourself and not know what you're doing, and I think that it makes it hard to get excited for the work that you're doing. So at a smaller company, there's a lot more focus on you, and you also get the ability to learn a lot more because you kind of have to ask questions to everybody, and everyone's friendly in a small company because they all eat lunch together and whatnot. So it just opens up the opportunity for you to get a lot of mentors and a lot of learning experience. But it is a little stressful and scary at the times too, being a small company.
Mine were all just large companies mainly because aerospace is kind of dominated by large companies. So I really don't have any experience with small companies. I knew I wanted aerospace, so I didn't really deviate from it. So I can't really speak to that much.
So at Color Kinetics, they're owned by Philips, but they're a fairly small sector of Philips, so they kind of operate by themselves. So you have some of the big company like umbrella stuff, which is kind of nice because you get a lot of funding and like you get to throw a lot of money at projects. But at Color Kinetics, I think there was like 7 or 8 mechanical engineers, so it's a fairly small team. So you kind of get the best of both worlds in some senses, where you get funding and you get to throw a lot of money at projects, but you still are involved in a lot of different things at once, and it's fairly fast-paced. smaller companies it's like a really dynamic, cool feel, and it's like extremely fast paced, but sometimes you don't get the funding to do exactly what you want, so you kind of have to improvise a bit. So they both have their advantages and disadvantages, but as Matt said, you should definitely try both, would be my recommendation.
Good, right?
For those of you who went on kind of large relocations for your co-ops, how did you make that transition work, and what was the most difficult part of transitioning to a place you might not know anybody?
Well, SpaceX is the one I moved far for, and they made it super easy. So they put us up they found housing for us. They put all the interns together, kept us all in one quarter. They paid for me to move cross country. They paid for me to move back. So they made it very simple. If you are planning on going far away, it's definitely something I would ask about after you've accepted, or not accepted, but when you're considering accepting. Because Sikorsky made it a little more difficult. They gave me a stipend and everything. So they gave me some money to move, but they didn't really make it easy for me to find housing. But like I was saying before, there's tons of sublets, and you just got to be mindful of who you're subletting from. But I didn't have any problems. No.
I found a place on Craigslist before I went to California, like a month before, and it was with some college kids that went to University of California at Santa Cruz, and it was kind of like a dingy house, and it didn't really work out, but it was fine for the first month, and I got like my feet under me. But then I found another place on Craigslist who was within some guy who's like 27, but he actually was like a really cool guy, and I met a lot of friends through him, and we lived like 5 houses from the beach. So just use Craigslist and just keep an open mind. Like the first month or 2 months you're out wherever you go might be a little bit difficult, but I mean it will work out. You'll figure out how to do it. So.
And Pete, did you get money to be able to?
They gave me a little bit of a stipend, but not a whole lot. But I mean the housing out there is cheaper than here, so it was fine.
Oh, what transportation?
I drove to California from here, so that was.
While during your call in California, like, did you have a car?
Yeah, I drove from here to California, so yeah, so I had a car out there.
Yeah, I drove too. But SpaceX had a shuttle that actually brought you to work if you wanted to do that too.
You
So-
said shuttle.
A space shuttle.
LA traffic.
I think,
Yeah, well, actually, just real quick, I think I gave Allison a few white hairs. I never had a car, and I never worked at a place that you can get to via public transport.
what did you do to me? I didn't hear you.
Gave white hairs, because you were like, don't apply to all these places.
What are you talking about?
You cover some of them. But yeah, it's something you have to be mindful of. With bigger companies like Boston Scientific and Phillips Kinetics, there's always going to be somebody that you can bank on to have a car. Someone else will be driving. I took a big risk with Fixed, and I remember her specifically saying, if you get the job, are you going to like it enough to actually like buy a car? And I told her, yeah, sure. Kind of thinking I wasn't going to get the job, and then I did. And I got kind of worried. And then it turns out that
You never told me he was worried.
Yeah, it's okay. The other 2 people who applied and got jobs both also thought they were also banking on having cars.
Oh, you're kidding me.
So like mid-December rolled by and none of us had cars. And I convinced one of the other guys to drive. So he bought his neighbor's car. It worked out. But basically you have to be conscious of that going in. Like if you really like a place and a car is in the works, go for it. But like for my third co-op, yeah, be realistic. For my third co-op, it didn't make sense for me to buy a car since I would just have to put it in storage for a year. So I was really hoping somebody else would jump on that, and they did. I got lucky. But yeah, be very mindful of that because it adds some extra stress that you don't want.
Yeah, what tips do you have? I mean, obviously for like a larger company, there's always the risk of like you said, getting lost in the fold, I guess. But what tips do you have for like maximizing your co-op experience, I guess, like maximizing the benefit you get out of co-op?
I would just simply like actively look for work, ask for work wherever you can, and just try to develop relationships with people you deem as smart or like good assets to the company. Just because if you have like a couple mentors who are like willing to help you and willing to give you good work, that's like the most beneficial way to do it, really.
Yeah. I would just say ask questions. I used to like it. Every once in a while, at least at the bigger companies, I get a lull in work, and the people that you're familiar with just go by, ask them what they're doing. And I probably told 50 people, hey, if you ever need anything, just let me know. I don't have a ton of stuff to do, which was a total lie, but it's just a way to kind of like, it shows you initiative pretty much, and then people remember that.
Yeah. And then just keep your eye out for new things that you can try. Kind of go in after some time, maybe after a couple months, really start to realize what you want to get out, like what's feasible to get out of that co-op. So if you're sitting there and you're just doing desk work all day and you say, well, they do have a good machine shop, maybe I can get in there and learn something machining. See if there's a way that you can get into that by asking for work or asking questions. But yeah, a couple months in, just kind of take a look at where you're at, what you're doing, and what's possible. And that can help you maximize.
Did any of you set any kind of learning outcomes before you started, or goals? And if maybe you didn't, maybe you did, and you didn't do it formally, but you did it informally?
I didn't officially set any goals, but when I going in there, I knew I was going to learn finite element analysis, but I didn't know how to use 3D modeling very well. It was my first one. So when I had breaks in the finite element analysis, I didn't want to sit there and do nothing, because then you just kind of lazy. So I just taught myself basic 3D modeling. So I was doing tutorials and stuff like that, which makes you look busy and then shows initiative and all that stuff. So I guess I didn't officially set goals, but I did in the back of my head know what I wanted to take away from it. Because I think it's important, at least for your first one, to walk into it and say, this is the skill set I want to develop, and just really just look to do it, ask questions of people who know what I'm talking about. Similar.
I did that with my third co-op. I had an offer for one company before I actually interviewed at Fixed, and they didn't have a lot to offer. It was going to be kind of a run-of-the-mill co-op. And when I went to Fixed, I saw they had a chance for me to learn how to machine, for me to make mold parts, for me to really buff up my prototyping skills and work in a rapid environment. So I kind of said, all right, I really want to learn as much as possible and do as many different things as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and decline that first co-op position and try for Fixed. So it ended up working out, but I made that conscious decision that I wanted to get as much out of it as possible and do as many different things as possible before I even started. And I think I succeeded in that, so I feel pretty good about that third co-op.
I would say just try never to be bored on the job, and every week just write down what you did and then think about next week and how you can really improve your performance. And I think it's not necessarily meeting goals, but it's a good way just to maximize every week. Just try to maximize what you do, because it'll just be really helpful in the end.
Yep.
Did the duration of your commute affect you guys in any way?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's find the positives. You get a chance to talk with your carpoolers, which is good, and listen to some good music. I mean, it is a little frustrating when you drive 20 minutes in to work in the morning, and then it takes an hour and 45 to get back home. But I mean, that just depends on the roads that you take, the traffic, and how much of an idiot Boston drivers are. So, I mean, it can really all depend, but it is a good chance to kind of unwind, especially if you're not the one driving. You can just kind of relax and have a conversation, which is cool. But, I mean, it's not a bad thing. I wouldn't ever say don't take a job because of a bad commute. Really look at the experience that the co-op can offer.
You get used to it. And when I was at SpaceX, I had to go in at the first shift, so I was in there at 5 in the morning. And it's just it sucks on Mondays, I'll tell you that. But you eventually just get used to it, and then it just, I wouldn't turn down or accept anything because of I get to go in at 9 or I don't get to go in at 9.
Yeah. As Matt said, when you're driving, when you want to be home and it takes an hour and 45 minutes, it's really the only time you hate the Red Sox. So, but a long commute definitely makes a short commute better. So on my second co-op, I literally just took the orange line and it took 15 minutes. So I don't think it should really affect your decision on a job.
And it's only 6 months.
Yeah, it's only 6 months.
I know to all of you it feels like an eternity, but it's not. It's only 6 months, and for an amazing job that you're going to gain awesome skills that is going to boost your resume, it's worth 6 months of a bit, of a drive.
Plus, when you're back in class, you'll be wishing you were sitting in the car in traffic.
Yeah, and to understand at your age, think about it, you guys tell me, all the juniors stay right in the Boston area. You guys have already done the big commute. So as you get a little bit older and want good for your second experience at 30, you're like, oh no. So the sophomore should be looking outside of Boston. Go out, because those juniors won't go there, am I right? You guys, maybe not go there?
I stayed out the whole time.
You did stay,
Yeah.
but I'm talking about outside of 495 in that area. That's
Wouldn't do
sometimes a
that.
big deal breaker, so look at those opportunities.
If you could do anything differently about your co-op experience, what would it be?
Good question.
Stump me.
Yeah.
Now you guys are on the other end, be thrilled.
Yeah. It's tough. Yeah, so the question was if we could do anything differently about our co-ops, what would it be?
I honestly don't have a good answer.
I don't know. I was really happy with the whole
I
experience.
was, yeah, I feel like my first one set me up for my second one, and my third one was exactly what I wanted to learn. I mean, I didn't like living in New Haven, but I mean, it was 6 months, so I'll get over it.
Yeah, I think if I could do anything differently, it would have been better documentation of what I had done. You know, you don't know it at the start, but now when we're building portfolios and whatnot and trying to actually get a real job, trying to pull together the crappy pictures that I've taken for an official portfolio is not the best thing to do. So, like, if you're good at documenting what you've done before, it makes your life a whole heck of a lot easier down the rest of the line. That's really what I would have done differently.
Similar but different, but what was your biggest lesson learned across all of your co-ops?
So what was the biggest lesson learned? I think the biggest lesson learned was to ask questions and not be afraid to, with me. And it's like, it doesn't make you look bad at all. It makes you look knowledgeable and at least somewhat, I don't know what the right word is, but it's a good quality to have. If you don't know how to do it, don't mess it up. Like, bother someone else. It's better to take away 5 minutes of time than not to. I did that in my third co-op. I did a couple things wrong that I shouldn't have done that ended up spending a week trying to fix down the road. So if I had just asked from the get-go, everything would have worked out fine. But
That must have been a tough week.
yeah, you feel bad about it for a little while, especially if it's a big mistake, like a lot of money spent.
I'd say mine was pretty much, I would say go in 15 minutes early, stay 15 minutes late, because it's 15 minutes, and I've been told by all of my employers that it's something they notice. It's just like, all they want to see is a hard work ethic. It's not, your college students, they don't know what they're going to get out of you, so if they see that you're really putting in the effort, and that you're at least trying your best and you're interested in what you're doing, I think that goes farther than being really good at any skill.
I would just, so you're obviously going to be given certain tasks and just try to go beyond them whenever you can. Managers would always take note of additional things you do and just going above and beyond, and that's really going to set you apart, I think.
Do you feel like you were over or underqualified for the majority of your jobs?
I felt pretty underqualified for my first one. I think I was the first time co-op they ever took on, so pretty much everyone else that goes in there had SolidWorks experience and machining experience. So I kind of felt behind the ball for a month or so, but just putting in extra time learning SolidWorks and just, you know, taking everything in stride, and as Matt said, just ask questions whenever, especially up front, they expect you to ask questions. So don't, especially in the first 2 months, don't just sit there and try to figure things out yourself. Just actively ask questions. And
Peter, can you just to kind of piggyback off that, why do you think those Color Kinetics hired you as a sophomore? When they typically hire builders?
I just went into that interview with the intention of, you know, showing my interest in engineering, showing like my desire to learn things, and just being, just making a point to saying like, yes, I know I don't know everything, and I know there's some candidates that probably know more than me, but my desire to learn and my like fit into the team will be of benefit to you guys.
I think if you're overqualified for a co-op, then you're probably in the wrong one. I mean, you're in college, you're supposed to be learning things. I think it's better to jump in, like, just see what happens. Like, I think I was overly unqualified for all three of them, to be honest with you. I stepped in, I had no idea what I was doing. I made that perfectly clear. And you just kind of figure it out as you go, and then you just learn all these skills. Like, if you look back at what you knew at the beginning and what you knew 6 months later, it's ridiculous. If you do the right thing, like if you really put in the time.
I think the same sort of stuff. Felt pretty good about the first two co-ops, and then that third one I fixed, even though I was a senior or third year co-op, I still felt pretty unqualified for it, even going in. They expect a lot out of you as a third time, especially if you go to some of these reach companies. And it's just a lot to learn, and that feeling underqualified is a good thing too. it kind of can push you to learn more, to do more, and go that extra mile, so you don't just kind of sit down and get set in your ways.
How do you guys think your first co-op set you up for your future co-ops?
So I think that at least in my first co-op, I learned a lot about testing and the roots of mechanical engineering. So I got kind of my feet wet in SolidWorks design, understood test practices. By the time that I got into my second co-op, I could kind of say, okay, I can design some stuff in SolidWorks. I feel more confident around the workplace, which is a big thing. And really I could just keep developing those skills, which pushed me into the third one, which said I'm pretty darn confident in SolidWorks. And at that point I had classes to back my mechanical skills, and I just felt even more comfortable after interviews and whatnot, so I could actually go in and nail the interview and be charismatic. So it just kind of all rolls together, and it combines with your classes too. I think you'll find it may be a little bit difficult at first to relate your classes to what you're doing, but as you go in for your second and third co-ops, everything will kind of start gelling together, and you'll get a good mix of school and work experience that creates a pretty good holistic package.
Yeah, my first one I learned finite element analysis, like I said before, which is something that they usually, it's hard to get right away, but I knew because I knew someone. And then, so that put a buzzword on my resume, which SpaceX saw, and then they taught me a bunch of stuff, so then he put a whole bunch more buzzwords. It's just like, a lot of it's luck and a lot of it's just hard work and just learning what you're doing. I mean,
yeah, I think, anything in engineering really builds on itself, so skills that are in a completely different industry, you can somehow figure out how to apply to a different job. My second co-op really didn't build upon either of my other two in any way. It was more like business oriented, as I mentioned, but I think you learn a lot in every co-op, regardless if it builds on each other or not. So I think my approach was just to get different experiences every time. So I guess there's kind of two schools of thought. You can get different experiences, or you can try to get a trajectory of building on itself. And I think it's kind of personal preference. If you know you want to go into a certain industry, then you'll be able to build on it more. But if you want to dabble into a bunch of different things, I don't think that's a bad approach at all.
Can you give us some advice about your interviewing, phone screens, Skype interviewing, and in-person interviews, hard questions you've gotten, that kind of stuff?
okay, so before I did any of my co-ops, definitely research the company. I've never had an interview where the first thing they didn't ask me was, what do you know about the company? I write five to 10 bullets about what I know about the company, and then I run through them quickly. I mean, they don't want to hear like, oh, you're the 5th largest company, whatever. They just want to see that you did some research and that you actually know what's going on. I would do that. The other thing I did was, I've also never had an interview where I didn't get a technical question, which is hard when you're a sophomore because you haven't had a lot of engineering background. But what I did do was, if you go on Google and you search 100 engineering interview questions, there's 100 interview questions. Just look at them. I mean, they're not looking for you to, a lot of the times they don't care if you get it right, they just want to hear your train of thought. So just expose yourself to like how you would solve a problem. Just try and don't panic, keep an open mind and just see what happens. But I would say those are the two things that I would recommend the most.
I would say have a ton of really good questions. I think like it's not good at an end of an interview for it to be cut short because there's just kind of silence, especially when you're on site. If you go to an office or go to a job site, then just ask questions about what you see as you're walking. They'll probably give you a tour, and just ask as many questions as you can. That'll really show your interest in the company. That would be I guess that's my.
Also make a nice career portfolio. It's very helpful.
Portfolio, that's key.
I think, it's pretty obvious, but be as outgoing and charismatic as you can be. I mean, everyone wants to say that they want to hire the best candidate, but in truth, a lot of what the hiring process is about, will you mesh with the team? So you might not be as technically sound. I might not be as technically sound as Josh, but maybe I'm a better fit for the office feel and the vibe and who's working there. So they're going to take me, who knows? But not the name, no. So like a lot of it's just your outward appearance and how you can actually talk about yourself and your experiences.
Yeah. Harping on that, don't try too hard. Like just be yourself to some extent.
Yeah.
Obviously act professionally, but don't overdo it.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah.
Follow up from that, sort of balancing offers. You talked about you denied an offer because you were waiting for another. Can you talk about sort of recommendations on that whole process?
Yeah, balancing offers is tough. So you can always delay. You can hopefully you can always like send a company a quick email when they give you a response. Like if they say we want to hire you and we want to hear by tomorrow, see if you can't push it back. If you know that you're going to get other interviews and they've already been lined up. It's tough to know when to decline. That's all on you. But basically, if you feel like you got a real shot at someplace else and you just think that would be a better experience, go for it. It's tough. It's personal.
Definitely talk to your advisor, Allison.
Yeah,
It's
that's
pretty
it.
helpful with that for me at least. You gotta. It's a weird thing because if you have like a long shot, it all depends on how much you really want the company. If it's like an average company for you, but you got it, you have a couple other average ones you applied to, go like, okay, decline it and see what happens. But you'll get a job. It's just a matter of when.
Yeah. And keep every company that you're interviewing with kind of in the know, at least slightly. So if you finish the interview, like when I went to Fix and I already had an offer in the works, I finished it and said, oh, by the way, if we can turn this around as quick as possible, that'd be awesome. I've got somebody else who's wanting to hear back from me. And that kind of accelerated their decision process from 1 to 2 weeks to 3 days. So which was very nice because I was able to string on the other company for an extra couple of days.
I just want to add into that, just a couple of years ago, I had a student who didn't communicate with the company. He got an offer, he just disappeared, he didn't communicate, and the employer pulled the offer, and the student was like, what just happened? Well, you disappeared, we didn't know where you went, and they pulled the offer back. So just really be careful about playing that whole situation. I know what you talked about now, when you get a little bit older, you're gonna be able to do that, a little bit more. Yeah.
But the most important thing is, you guys came in, and they happen to all be my students. So if they ever had offers, they came in to chat with me about it, and I was able to kind of tell them, this is what the other companies are doing right now. If you haven't gotten an interview, oh, I just heard from Fix, they said they're gonna bring you in, you just haven't heard from them yet. That kind of stuff. A lot of times we're in the know, and we can help guide you in the right direction.
And what I was saying, Maddie, what you said was great, keep them informed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. They interpret no response as I'm not interested. And the employers reserve the right to move on to the next student. They don't want to lose their second choice.
There's a question in the back, I think.
Oh, I was going to ask, do you find the transition between co-op and then schoolwork and then co-op and schoolwork difficult or refreshing?
Can you repeat that question?
Yeah. So is the co-op class cycle difficult or refreshing? I think it's refreshing. Totally. You guys have been in classes straight through right now, and when you guys go on your co-op, it's going to be awesome, hopefully, for 6 months, and then you'll go back to classes, and you both have their perks and their pitfalls. On co-op, it's super awesome because you have free weekends. You really generally don't have much to do at night unless you take home projects. But it also means that you have to get up probably a little earlier than you're used to. You might be away from the house longer than you would be normally in classes. So, maybe by the time that you're done with co-op, you're kind of itching to get back into that and meet with friends and hang out with people all day. And then right about the time that finals kick in, you're like, wow, I really wish I was on co-op. So it recycles and refreshes, which is nice.
I don't know anyone who's bummed to go on co-op, so.
It's like when you're on co-op, you get money, and when you're in class, you get to sleep.
There's one way in the back.
Have you ever made a decision, in the process of applying or even at your co-op, that you'd like to graduate or regret?
So regretful decisions?
In interviewing or while I was working?
While working or even
Interviewing, I made a mistake, is I applied to GE 3 times and I turned it down every time.
Yeah, Josh and I had lots of conversations about that.
So that was a mistake. I think they were a little angry, but I didn't. I just had other opportunities. I would not do that again. But that's pretty much, that's
Thanks for your honesty.
Yes, I don't do that.
It's like trying to date somebody 3 times and turn them down 3 times.
Yeah, I'm sure, if we went back, there are things that I know that I've messed up in projects and whatnot that I wish, again, that goes back to that questions, wish I had just asked somebody before I had broken a $500 part. But it's okay. It comes out in the wash at the end of the day. You know, as long as you show initiative and want to fix the problem that you started, it works out. But yeah, I mean, there's small things that you can do here and there which mess you up that, you know, I wish that I had asked
You
beforehand.
just have to ask how expensive the part is.
Yeah, or just run away.
Just go hide.
Yeah.
Going back to the interview cycle, were you ever in an interview process where it was awkward or the interviewer was not prepared? Did you have to take control of the interview?
So awkward interview stuff? No. There hasn't been, I haven't had like, a super awkward experience yet, which is nice. I know that there have been some of my friends who have said that they've had to take control, like you said. I mean, there was one company where I felt after, like midway through the interview, people were being a little bit unprofessional. They started to scoff at an answer that I had, and that really threw me off my game. And then it ended up just kind of spiraling, and then at the end I was like, just walked out of the company. And that was on my 3rd cycle, so it can happen whenever. So you never know what could happen, but just try not to get thrown off your game. Try to just roll with the punches. Sometimes they're going to try to mess you up on purpose, but
yeah, I had an interview with Apple, or I can't remember if it was Apple or SpaceX, where it was over the phone. So they'd ask me a technical question, and then there was another guy on the phone who was trying
This
to...
was Apple, I remember.
It was
this.
Apple. And then that guy was trying to convince me that I gave the wrong answer, so he's trying to change my mind.
Oh.
And then there was like another guy who was like trying to tell me that I gave the right... It was just weird. They were just trying to see like how firm I was and open-minded. I don't even know what they were trying to learn. I thought they were just having a good time with me. But yeah, I think the key is to just gotta like take a breath and just like try and relax. But I mean, I've been in interviews where they try and make you nervous, and how you react to that is important to them.
My second co-op at Digital Lumens, my manager was like an ex-nuclear sub commander, and I Skype interviewed him, and he pops up on the screen and wearing a beanie and like a huge beard, and he has like a really awkward sense of humor. So it was, and with that in combination with the Skype interview, it was like some awkward moments, but I guess I gave the right answers, and like when I actually got to know him, it kind of all made sense. So it was just like an awkward situation.
Any other questions?
I have something to add. We in class, we've been doing a lot of work with, I know in my class, we're talking about the 3 M's. Anybody remember from my class? Ani, I'm going to pick on you.
Mindfulness.
Yeah, mindset.
Oh, all of them?
Yeah, mindset, motivation. And with that, and we've been doing some readings on it, and I think that when you guys were in a section of this, and you were talking about, you know, working, getting work, doing all that, all I started to think about was they have really what we call, what is it, a mindset? Tavish, you gonna help me? They've got a growth mindset here, they really do. So they're going into situations where they have no clue whether they can handle this or not, and what they're saying is, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna learn it. The other piece is motivation. How motivated you need to be at work, and to chase after good work and show them you can do it, and then good work begets good work. So those things are really important, and I want to tie them back into the student panel, because the mindset and motivation here, growth, and it's just, it's tremendous. I think if you guys can see that, it's very evident here. And we want you guys to do that at work when you're out there. I think these are really great models for you to look at what you can do with work. And when you don't know anything about it, to a certain extent.
What's going on after graduation?
Yeah.
Any plans?
I don't know. I need to finish capstone before I think.
I understand. Yeah. No irons in the fire right now?
I got an offer and then one that I'm supposed to get, but I'm still looking at other ones, mostly in California.
And where would that, do you mind telling us?
I'm trying to get a job at Boeing or Apple. Those are the 2 that I want right now,
Great.
but they're hard to get, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Great. I had one other question too about electrical engineering experience. You guys, did you get it when you were on co-op, and how valuable did you find that?
Those 2 probably did more than I did.
I got a little bit of it at Color Kinetics. I mean, it's good to know generally what you're doing. It's kind of a good booster to say you've soldered, I've connected, like connectorized wires. I know what 5 volts versus 120 volts is. I mean, it's all simple stuff, but if you can kind of string it together and you know how you go from a wall plug to a USB port, what's the necessary steps in between, that's pretty cool. Because it just means that maybe you can get involved in, at least in fixed, maybe there's some product that they need to integrate electronics with. So you can say, hey, I've done that before, or maybe you get involved with Arduino or something like that. And I know that's getting more common. And I would recommend, if you haven't already, like practice around with Arduino. It becomes super useful, especially in capstone. And it's a good stepping stone to understanding what sensors are and what you can do as a mechanical.
Yeah, I mean, at Color Kinetics, mechanical engineers deal with all the wiring harnesses, connectors, connections to the boards, and like heat sinking the PCB boards. So that's kind of where the line is drawn, and I definitely dealt with that a lot. But once you get into like the actual PCB boards and the circuits, you don't really have to know a whole lot, but anything upstream of that is fair game.
Then my other question is about SolidWorks, because that's the whole thing everybody's thinking of. I don't have any SolidWorks experience other than freshman year, and I won't get a job unless I have it. Can I have a comment from you guys about just that tool, the application tool, how valuable you think it is, and then what you know about it?
There's a ton of different 3D modeling. SolidWorks is one of the one they teach here. And once you learn SolidWorks, you can pretty much apply it. The buttons are just in a different place. I went to my first job, didn't have any SolidWorks experience, but I didn't want a design job. So it worked out for me. I know, I think I still do, ASME does a workshop you can do. And I know there's a class now, but I don't know what level it is. I would recommend doing it. Is it upper level? I don't know.
They do it in GE.
They do it in GE.
Yeah, I mean, I would recommend knowing it because it's, at least in aerospace, what I was doing, you use it every day. I could get away with not knowing a ton about it, but I wish I knew more, which is why I was trying to teach it to myself while I was there.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot that you can do on your own. You can model things around your apartment, which is super fun to show your friends, I know. Like, hey, look at this pen that I modeled. But, it gives you some experiences that you can show off. Like working at Fix, they're pretty heavily SolidWorks based. There's a lot that they designed in. And I went in thinking I was some kind of hotshot in SolidWorks, and I knew nothing compared to what they told me. They basically said, strip it all down, start from the base, go up. And they rebuilt how I looked at modeling. So basically, if you get your feet wet with SolidWorks, you're just trying to learn how do you create something three-dimensional in a computer. It doesn't matter what program you then take it to, because you just need to get that foundation down. How do I go from a physical object to a computer object, or from a computer object to a physical object? That's really all you need to learn. And then from there, it's just like Josh said, figuring out where the buttons are on the program that you're using, and figuring out what the design method is from the company that you're using.
Yeah, like SolidWorks is definitely the most intuitive to use that I've seen of the modeling programs. So definitely just start playing around with it. Like Matt said, just model some stupid stuff, make some assemblies. You can learn a lot just by messing around. At the same time, though, there's like the programs are so robust, and you can do if you can imagine it, the program can do it. So try to learn from your coworkers once you've got a co-op, because there's a lot of ins and outs that are really powerful tools that aren't as intuitive and upfront. But so yeah, just play around with it, but then you can always learn more about it.
What did you do to build trust with your employers when you first got there?
Building trust.
I would just try to work with them a lot up front. Like I said, ask questions, show initiative, meet your deadlines, and just do the best work you can up front, and then they'll build off that and give you more pertinent work and put more trust in you and give you more freedom to do things you would like to. So just build that relationship right off the bat.
I think it's just all about showing initiative. If you're there and you're asking questions, it depends on how available they are. But if you're handing in quality work and you're asking for more, I think that's pretty much all you need to do. Then they'll trust you to do more.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Yeah.
You guys are working on portfolios right now. So before you graduate, you're going to have to take another class with us called Professional Issues in Engineering. And if you don't have a portfolio at that point, you will by the end of that class. So, or the start of one. So some of you, one of you in particular I know, doesn't have samples of work from co-op because of intellectual property restrictions. So how have you gotten around that? Can you give advice to the sophomores? Because inevitably there are going to be many of you who are going to run into this and can't take anything from co-op.
So I'm the one who has nothing from I can use. So basically what I showed you before is, I actually haven't used it yet. That was kind of the suggestion I was going to run by Allison, but I was just going to model a part, do my own analysis on it, and then just pretty much show that I know something. You can just say, like, I created this this is the problem I created for myself, and I did it, and it shows 1 initiative, and it shows 2, you know what you're talking about. So if like I had before, where I broke down the steps, if I could walk through a problem that I set up myself, I think it shows a lot. I don't really know the best way to explain it, but...
No, I think that's great.
Okay.
Yeah. And hobbies, do you guys have you ever done, I know Pete, you do a lot of cycling and stuff. Have you ever brought your hobby stuff to show an employer? I think you might have done that with Santa Cruz.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely talked to Santa Cruz a lot of just about riding and things, and it was just more of a casual conversation. I think portfolios don't have to be necessarily just on the job work. Like anything that shows your technical skills is something good to put into a portfolio, especially if you don't have samples of work from the job for whatever reason. So just highlight any technical skills, anything like, it's essentially an extension of your resume at this point, just a conversation starter. So whatever you can put in there that feels that would catch an employer's eye is something that has a place in there.
I think hobbies are an important thing to know about when you're putting it on your resume. If you're going to put it on, actually care about it. I mean, if you, like, I've trimmed mine down from like a list of, I included sports and stuff, but I haven't played sports in a while. I haven't played instruments since high school. I used to be on there my first co-op round, and then I got questions saying, oh, when do you play volleyball? And I said, not anymore. 4 years ago. Like, oh, you're in a rock band, that's pretty cool. What do you play? Oh, yeah, that was in high school. So, you know, they can catch you on that kind of stuff. So now it's limited to the things that I actually actively do. And just, you know, if you put it on, just be interested and be prepared to show it, because that's the stuff that will set you apart from just a guy who's just a desk jockey and can sit there and cat all day versus the guy who can talk about his study abroad experience and his love for traveling and cooking and whatnot. So.
Sometimes those are the things too that the employer likes. I broke ice in my interviews with stuff that was my interests on there too. When I was growing up, I used to pick tobacco as like a job, and everyone found that fascinating. So I think that's still on there. But it's the little stuff, like putting little hobbies and stuff. Sometimes you just get lucky and they're into that, and you can have a 5-minute conversation. Then you're the person they remember. Yep.
From the employer perspective, if you're not sure what to put in your portfolio, having had co-ops work for me, ask.
Yeah.
All I do is ask. If it's proprietary or confidential information, ask what you can transition into a career portfolio. And 9 times out of 10, they're going to give you some kind of solution. It might not necessarily be the specific product, but it might be an overarching overview of what you've done that they give you approval to do.
Right, if it's hit the website, you can use it a lot of times, and you can strip it down and use some pictures that you can talk about, so it is something that you can do.
I have seniors right now in that professional issues class who are going back to their first year co-ops, emailing, saying, what can I put in my portfolio? So ask and have it ready. Get it started now, because you'll be scrambling otherwise.
Any additional questions?
Have you maintained contact with like your first co-op?
Yeah, so maintaining contact, that's something I guess that can answer your question back from way back before, like what do I wish I had done better. I do wish that I had maintained contact with my first employer a little bit better. I maintained contact with my second employer much better and my third one since, but like when I was going for my third co-op, I had no idea that my boss from my first co-op had like either been fired or moved. I still don't know what's happened with him. So I can't really like use him on my contacts list anymore or references list because no one knows how to contact him. Because I don't have any email or anything. Yeah, I could do that. I should do that. It's a thing. But yeah, I mean, it's the kind of thing that, I wish that I had kept in a little bit better contact with him, but I've done it since. And, you can shoot him reminder emails, or if you do anything cool, just ask, like, how's it going? Especially if you left a project midway through and you say, did that ever get finished?
And the best way to maintain that network is through LinkedIn. Start your LinkedIn page before you pick co-op, and we talk about. But as soon as you finish that first round co-op, start linking in with them, and you start to build your network.
Yeah, I still talk to all mine. My first manager he was a younger guy. I still actually text him sometimes, and I'm trying to get a job from him. And then my third one offered me a job, so I've been emailing him. I just became a senior. I just emailed all three of them, and I was just like, hey, I'm looking for a job, trying to move on to the real world. So if you got any openings. But I definitely think it's worthwhile to try and get some kind of relationship, maybe outside of work, if appropriate, and talk to them about different things, hobbies.
Yeah, I did the same thing as Matt. I kind of dropped the ball in the first. They're still communicating with my first co-op, but my second two I still talk to a lot. I was at Digital Lumens like last week. They do like Beer Fridays, so may as well go get some free beer and talk to old coworkers.
Anything else? You guys got plenty of information. I see somebody almost clapping right there.
All right.
Have you had enough advice? Okay, I think a big round of applause.